Tonight on Reporting Scotland, calls for inspectors to review child protection in Fife after a series of deaths. Today, a former soldier was jailed for killing a baby in Buckhaven. Police appeal again for information about the whereabouts of the lead singer of the band Frightened Rabbit. Scott Hutchison went missing yesterday.
We love him so much, and we miss him, and we're here for him, and please just come back.
Also on the programme, a man sentenced to at least 22 years for murdering the driver of a car stopped at traffic lights in Glasgow. The base of Britain's nuclear arsenal at Faslane is 50 years old today. And the islands of Uist are on the up, bucking the trend of island depopulation. More young people are choosing to live there. Good evening. There are calls for a thorough overview of Fife's child protection services. A leading children's charity has told the BBC that inspectors should be called in after a series of child deaths in the area. Today, a former soldier was jailed for 7.5 years for killing 5-month-old Hayley Davidson in Buckhaven. She was the 4th child to be killed in Fife in 2 years. Our health and social care correspondent Lisa Summers reports.
Gordon Mackay, seen here carrying the bag, shook Hayley Davidson violently. It caused a brain injury that led to her death. Today, Lord Uist made clear that this was a terrible crime.
The taking of a baby's life by an assault involving repeated shaking, even where it does not amount to the crime of murder, is an extremely grave crime which must attract a lengthy sentence of imprisonment.
Hayley had been left in Mackay's care by her mother, but its emerged Child Protection Services had also been involved. Buckhaven, where she spent her short life. I've spent the last year in Fife reporting on child protection issues.
And Hayley's tragic case is just the latest in a series of awful stories.
Between 2014 and 2016, Fife saw 4 child killings where child protection was an issue. Michael Cooler, Liam Fee, Madison Horn and Hayley Davidson. Gordon Mackay was responsible for Hayley's death, but is there more to this story? We've examined court documents that raise serious concerns about child protection in her case. On January the 1st, 2016, she was admitted to Victoria Hospital with a broken arm, treated and released. Mackay said the injury was an accident and Child Protection Services accepted that. Hayley was taken to the same hospital after Mackay attacked her in February. When she became seriously ill, she was transferred to the Sick Kids in Edinburgh. Only at this point did doctors discover a series of healed injuries, including fractures that suggest previous abuse. A review of the x-rays from a previous visit to Victoria Hospital revealed those fractures were visible and should have been detected at the time. NHS Fife says protocols were changed as a result. A significant case review into the events leading to Hayley's death is now underway. But the BBC revealed problems with previous reviews. In Madison's case, the review did not mention that a social worker failed to warn Madison's mother about the previous offending history of Kevin Park, her new partner. He later murdered Madison. In Liam's case, a whistleblower told the BBC that an opportunity to intervene in Liam's case just weeks before his death was missed after he was seen at the Victoria Hospital. This was not included in the review. So is it time for an outside look at whether Child Protection Services here in Fife are learning the lessons they should?
I suppose really, given the history, I would suggest that the time is right for Fife now to call in the inspectors and ask for a thorough overview of what is happening in the Child Protection Service. Do they need more resources? Should they be investing, for example, in more paediatric support in every one of their hospitals in Fife? That independent overview, I think the time is right, and I think, frankly, that Liam Fee and Hayley's death and the others deserve no less.
I certainly asked for it at the time and joined the voices saying that I think that an independent inquiry would have been appropriate. Fife has obviously ignored that and feel that they can make changes internally without anybody else having a look. If they can, and they have, fair enough, let us know. Tell us what has changed and explain to us why we no longer need an outside inquiry.
We asked those responsible for child protection services here in Fife about Hayley's case, but they said they couldn't comment until the review is complete. And they defended previous investigations, saying not all the information could be made public.
We first asked for an interview on these issues a year ago. To date, nobody has agreed to go on camera and answer our questions.
These 4 children's deaths are shocking, and not everyone is convinced we've really learned from them to ensure everything is being done to prevent similar tragedies in the future. Lisa Summers, reporting Scotland, Fife.
We love you, please come home. A plea today from the family of Scott Hutchison, lead singer of the indie rock band Frightened Rabbit. The 36-year-old musician hasn't been seen since the early hours of yesterday morning. Police are appealing to anyone who was in South Queensferry or the Forth Road Bridge area at that time to come forward. Katie Hunter reports.
As the lead singer of Frightened Rabbit, Scott Hutchison has fans around the world. Today, his family pleaded with him to come home.
We're all here for him, and just come back. You know, there's nothing else really that we can say. We love him so much, and we miss him.
The 36-year-old was seen in this CCTV image at the Dakota Hotel in South Queensferry on Wednesday morning. Scott's last tweet read, "I'm away now, thanks." He hasn't been heard from since.
Scott's been very open about his struggles with mental health and depression in particular, and we've obviously seen that firsthand, and as have his many fans and followers on Twitter.
Police are focusing on the Forth Road Bridge area, South Queensferry and Fife. They want to speak to a couple who crossed the bridge about 1:10 on Wednesday morning, or anyone else who may have seen Scott.
The description, that we've put out of Scott is 6 foot tall, a stocky build, wearing a hat, a khaki hat, a blue jacket and khaki trousers the last time that we've seen him in white trainers. Anyone that's seen Scott matching that description, we're really keen to hear from.
Scott has been missing before. The message from his mum is simple.
Just come home, Scott. Come home. We love you so much. Just want you back.
Scott's family say his music has helped thousands of fans through tough times. They now hope to help Scott through his own troubles.
Thank you.
Katie Hunter, reporting Scotland, South Queensferry.
A man's been sentenced to life in prison for murdering the driver of a car stopped at traffic lights. 33-year-old David Scott was part of a group that shot Ewan Johnson twice in the head. He'll serve a minimum of 22 years before he can be considered for parole. Katrina Renton reports.
It was on this street on the south side of Glasgow where Ewan Johnson was gunned down at the wheel of his car on the night of the 15th of November 2016. He'd been shot twice in the head as his car stopped at traffic lights in what was described in court as a deliberate execution. 33-year-old David Scott was part of a gang who planned the shooting. Ewan Johnson, an alleged drug dealer, was their target. Mr. Johnson and a friend had entered the Red Pepper restaurant. It was 11:15 at night. They were being watched as they sat at the window. An Audi Q5 can be seen driving past a couple of times and doing a U-turn. After parking in view of the restaurant, 3 men got out. David Scott was one of them. Just after 11:30, Ewan Johnson and his friend were seen driving off. The Audi followed them. 2 minutes later, the man who was the passenger in Ewan Johnson's car called the emergency services from here to tell them that Mr. Johnson had been shot. This was the aftermath. Ewan Johnson was taken to hospital, his injuries too severe to survive. Bullets were found at the scene. David Scott and the others had fled. Their blue Audi was later found burnt out on the other side of the city. Inside were fragments of a Nike hooded top. David Scott's DNA was on it. Today, he was convicted of murder. Judge Lady Stacey told him, "You carried this out in a public street and showed no regard to not only your victim, but also to members of the public." But he did not act alone, and tonight police are renewing their call for witnesses and say any new information will be thoroughly investigated. Katrina Renton, reporting Scotland, Glasgow.
MSPs have urged further concessions from the UK government in the row over devolved powers after Brexit. A report from Holyrood's Constitution Committee recommends that the Scottish Parliament should withhold consent for key parts of the UK government's EU withdrawal bill. The Scottish Secretary says he's still trying to broker a last-minute deal.
I think it would be unacceptable if the UK government were to proceed without the consent of the Scottish Parliament. We'd be into uncharted territory as far as that's concerned. But there is a way to resolve this, and that is through mutual respect and trust.
This government has just devolved income tax, it's just devolved a huge chunk of welfare. The idea that we would somehow be power-grabbing Crofting back from the devolution settlement is absolute nonsense. We are committed to devolution, and we're committed to working with the Scottish Government to get agreement.
The Royal Bank of Scotland has agreed a $4.9 billion settlement with US regulators to end an investigation into its actions in the run-up to the financial crisis of 2008. RBS said most of it would be covered by money already set aside. Chief Executive Ross McEwan described the agreement as a milestone. A climber has been rescued after getting stuck 80 feet down a cliff. The alarm was raised last night when the 20-year-old man got into difficulty off the north tip of Shetland. Coast Guard rescue teams brought the man to safety using ropes. He was flown by helicopter to hospital in Lerwick for checks and later released. A scheme to get children to walk or run a mile every day at school really does improve children's health. That's according to university research. The Daily Mile scheme was the brainchild of a head teacher in Stirling, and it's been copied by hundreds of other schools across Britain. But BBC Scotland's found that many schools aren't taking part every day. Here's our education correspondent, Jamie McIver.
It's a Scottish initiative that's caught on far and wide. The Daily Mile started at this school in Stirling, and the head's idea was simple. Get out of class for 15 minutes every day and run or walk a mile, all on top of normal PE and games.
I like coming out for the social part of it, and I also like it because I think running personally makes you feel happier and healthier.
It's like time's going slow. You're just wanting to get out, have some fun. The Daily Mile's there to put you in that mindset.
Now there's hard evidence to show how this extra exercise improves health. Detailed university research found it led to improved fitness, better body composition and boosted activity levels.
The key benefits that we've noticed are that the kids move more, the right kind of activity, the kind of activity that gets them out of breath. They sit less, and it's really encouraging that such a short, simple activity designed by school children and teachers is having such a positive impact.
At this school they do the Daily Mile with complete commitment every single day, come rain or shine. But at some other schools they might not be doing it 5 days a week.
For instance, in Angus, 34 primary schools have joined the scheme, but just 14 take part every single day. Elsewhere, some schools only do it weekly, while one school in Inverclyde is counting the scheme towards normal targets for exercise. The head teacher who came up with the idea says the Daily Mile really has to be a regular daily event.
To be done properly and to have the proven effects, the Daily Mile has to be done every day. So every school day for 15 minutes, every child. And that way they all get the benefits. It's not for 3 days a week, it's for 5 days a week, unless it's awful weather.
The Scottish Government supports the initiative and wants to encourage more schools to take part, but it has no plans to make it compulsory. Jamie McIver, reporting Scotland, Stirling.
You're watching BBC Reporting Scotland. It's on its way to 16 minutes to 7. A reminder of tonight's top story. Calls for inspectors to review child protection services in Fife after a series of deaths in the area. And still to come, the Uist, Isles of Uist, are on the up, bucking the trend of island depopulation. A survey suggests more young people are choosing to call the islands Today marks the 50th anniversary of the nuclear submarine base at Faslane. The Clyde base is home to 7 submarines, including the Trident nuclear weapons system. Their siting here is controversial, and in a moment we'll be looking at one long-running campaign against the weapons. But first, our reporter Cameron Buttle reports from the base.
The story goes that this site was chosen because it was usually raining and covered in thick, low cloud. The submarines could slip in and out unnoticed. The weather may well be the same, but a lot has changed here in 50 years. These are the new Astute-class submarines, nuclear-powered, armed with torpedoes and cruise missiles. Below decks, the 100-strong crew are preparing to sail later this summer.
We only carry missiles and torpedoes. They're used for self-defense or for conducting strike missions, as you've seen in Syria or other nations around the world.
We're on board HMS Artful, one of 3 nuclear-powered Astute-class submarines. We're not allowed to go beyond this door here because that's where the nuclear reactor is. There's enough power there to keep this boat at sea for more than a decade.
Faslane has its own Royal Marine unit dedicated to its protection. Senior officers describe it as an absolute no-fail mission.
You can't fail because the importance of the nuclear deterrent is something that you can't take chances with. And if you're going to have something like a nuclear deterrent, you have to guarantee that it's safe, that it's secure, that nobody can interfere with it.
The base is the size of a small town. There are nearly 7,000 people working here. It has multi-storey parking, its own bus service, shops, a cinema, and it's going to get even bigger. But ultimately, this base exists to house the British military's most controversial weapon system.
The deterrent is something we use every day. It's not something that we turn to, as you described, and would I use it? It's used every day. This base, its existence, the commitment we make to it, the people that work here, the commitment they make to the capability, is all part of using that deterrent.
Today there was a parade to mark the base's anniversary. Watching was Charles Wiley. He joined the base the day before it opened in 1968.
When I came, it seemed like a big place because it was brand new, everything was sparkling and new. But when I came yesterday and looked at it, it's absolutely gigantic compared with what was on then.
So the celebrations are over, and senior officers are saying they are now looking to the future because this base is going to be home to the entire UK nuclear submarine fleet. So it will remain highly controversial because many people will continue to campaign against nuclear weapons.
This is how it started in 1982 as a few tents and caravans. It was only supposed to be here for a few months, but is now one of the longest running permanent protest camps in the world. Iona Soper wasn't even born when it began. She's been here for around 2 years.
The camp being here, it's literally just that constant reminder that there is opposition to this, that every time somebody wants to drive up to Faslane, they have to drive past us first. Them being on one side of the road with their big grey buildings and their razor wire fences, and us being here with our bright colours and a smile.
The living conditions can be harsh. Heated by wood-burning stoves, protesters live in caravans and rely on donations and their own money to live.
Does living in camp ever become too difficult and you think, oh, what am I doing here?
Certainly when I first came here in 2016, it was a bit of a shock to the senses. I came from, a nice posh house in Edinburgh, so for me I really wasn't accustomed to the frugality and stuff like that at first.
There's around 10 full-time members, tracking the movements of boats, submarines and convoys. Andy has been here for 16 years.
Well, the submarines come and go all the time. Just recently we had an American submarine in, they're in the base or they're out the base. There's not really much we can do with that. But yeah, it's imperative that peace wins and that nuclear weapons don't.
Through the nearly 4 decades of its existence, there have been blockades and protests. Even though the campers are small in number, their presence in the local area can cause friction.
Particularly in Helensburgh, many people will either work in the base or they will rely on the income of somebody that works in the base. Many people in Helensburgh think that we're just hooligans, whereas really, you know, we are just here trying to save the world.
People here say they won't stop until the world is free of nuclear weapons. Even they admit they've picked a big fight. Suzanne Allen, reporting Scotland, Argyll.
Suzanne Allen and Cameron Buttle reporting there. Scots DJ Calvin Harris has made it onto the list of the UK's wealthiest young musicians. The Dumfries-born DJ, who now lives in Los Angeles, is number 18 in the top 20 of the Sunday Times Music Rich list. He's got £140 million, same as singer-songwriter Adele. Depopulation is a continuing threat to Scotland's more isolated communities, but some suggest the islands of Uist could buck the trend. A study's found that more young, economically active people appear to be moving there, underlining calls for more investment in public services and jobs. Jackie O'Brien reports.
Uist vet Elisich Dick tends to a Hebridean herd. The 27-year-old is as homegrown as the flock, and after studying in Edinburgh, she's returned to her roots where the pace of life has changed.
I think there is more of a push for just more exciting things happening. It's gone are the days where there was just Carnish Hall on a Friday night. There's more cultural things going on. Kickboxing now, there's yoga.
More people like Elisich are living and working in Uist, according to a local study of residents in their 20s and 30s. Of the young people identified, around half were either returners or newcomers. That group was responsible for producing just under half of the island's children and babies. And around 10% of young people living here in Uist have their own business. Architect Alex Jury spent holidays here as a child. Now he's moved his young family from Manchester after finding a job in the islands.
And it's all worked out. So swapped a 3-hour-a-day commute for a 10-minute-a-day commute, and it's just brilliant.
The islands have also become a magnet for those keen to immerse themselves in the Gaelic language.
I feel it's part of our culture, our heritage as well, so I've got a big interest in Gaelic, and it's something I would like to keep up with the children learning it too.
Those responsible for the study believe the population boost underlines the need for better public services in Uist, which has suffered cuts in social and healthcare provision.
What I would really love to see is not big hubs of centralised services, but maybe more mobile services that can come to you regardless of where you are, because, you know, our geography here, we are all spread out.
Some say more definitive data is needed to ensure this isn't a blip. But those involved in the study are adamant that Uist's tide of depopulation is turning. Jackie O'Brien reporting Scotland, Uist.
Pure frustration is what drove Neil Lennon to say he's considering his position as Hibs manager. That's the view of one of his closest colleagues in football, Chris Commons, who played under Lennon at Celtic. The Easter Road boss isn't happy about last night's Edinburgh Derby loss. Kerridine Idzan reports.
Easter Road, the home of Hibs, where all should be rosy in the garden, you would think. Crowds are up, the football is easy on the eye, and in their first season back in Scotland's top flight, a top 4 finish is guaranteed. And yet last night, the manager said this.
Not good enough for me, so I will reconsider my position now in the summer.
What does that mean? It must be your own position as manager of the football club?
Yes.
The outburst came after last night's Derby defeat at Hearts, which ruined their chances of a league runners-up spot. A man who was a winner under Lennon at Celtic thinks his old boss has reached the crossroads with Hibs.
I just think now is the pinnacle for them. What happens next, only Neil will know, and obviously the board at Hibs, but if they lose all their main players that have played such a key part in why they've done well in this season, then it's going to be a real uphill battle, because to get the quality that they've got and replace them with the money that they do spend, it's going to be very tough.
Following a season to remember on Leith, one former star is keen for Lennon to stay.
This guy is the real deal. This is a manager that's won leagues, been in the last 16 of the Champions League. As a player, he won everything. He only knows about winning. Doesn't he want to know about finishing 4th? He wants to finish 2nd. and push on to first. And that's the guy I think is brilliant.
I would like Dale to stay. He's done a fantastic job.
There's a lot of people like him around here. It'd be sad to see him leave.
Done a good job. I think he's just trying to get a reaction out of the players for the Sunday's game. That's the way I see it.
He's due to address the media again tomorrow. His immediate future should become clearer then. Kerry Nidsan, reporting Scotland.
Timeline's over on BBC Two at 7:30 tonight. Shireen and Glenn can tell us what's coming up.
Tonight, the Ayrshire man bullied for his appearance and his campaign to encourage people to report abuse of that kind as a hate crime.
The life of Scottish comedy pioneer Chick Murray retold in a new play.
And when dinosaurs ruled the earth, including the Isle of Skye, we'll speak to the paleontologist who found footprints there about his life in a Jurassic world.
That's Timeline, 7:30, BBC Two Scotland.
But in the meantime, let's see what our weather is up to. Chris?
Sally, thank you very much indeed. Not too bad today, was it? Hello there, good evening to you. Yes, plenty of sunshine around for many of us. A few showers in the mix, though, at times, admittedly. And, in fact, you can see those on the combined satellite and radar. There they are, pushing across the country. But most of them now fizzled away to leave plenty of dry, fine weather to end the day. Lovely evening sunshine. It stays dry tonight. It stays clear tonight. And that means it will be cold tonight, with temperatures in towns and cities down to around 4 or 5 Celsius. A few sheltered glens across the northeast down close to freezing with a touch of ground frost. Tomorrow, and we have high pressure out east, low pressure out west, in between this weather front, pushing up against that high. So its eastward progress somewhat stalled, and certainly in the west you'll see the cloud and rain. Further east, reasonably dry. And it starts dry tomorrow morning with some early sunshine, but there's that weather front with thickening cloud, outbreaks of rain, and a strengthening south or southeasterly wind too. So by mid-afternoon, anywhere really from the Rins of Galloway through Argyll and Bute, up through the Highlands and Islands, cloudy and damp, windy. Through the Minches, we could see gale force gusts at times. East of here, largely dry, a bit more cloud around compared with the morning, still quite breezy, and temperatures around 15, maybe 16 Celsius for the Moray Firth. Still plenty of sunshine on the Moray coast, northern Aberdeenshire, Caithness and the Northern Isles. Rest of the afternoon into the evening, that weather front continues to track its way eastwards, bringing a few spells of rain with it. To the weekend, and it's still with us, that weather front. There it is, draped around the eastern coast of the UK. Troublesome feature, really, because it means fairly thick cloud at times for eastern Scotland, with some outbreaks of rain on and off. Further west on Saturday, largely dry and fine, some spells of sunshine. Temperatures in the mid-teens, quite a pleasant day. Winds lighter than tomorrow as well. Sunday, it's still with us, that weather front. If anything, the rain on it, that bit heavier, but different weather models have it in different positions, so it could be a bit further north than east. Fingers crossed. That's the forecast for now.
Thanks so much, Chris. And that's Reporting Scotland. I'll be back just after the 10 o'clock news. Good night.